Alrighty, we just talked about that Army-Navy game that is going on this weekend. Cannot wait for that one to get underway. It's one of my favorite games of the year. Don't love that it's not on its own Saturday this year, but at the end of the day, I understand, and it's standalone time. So at the very least, we'll be able to lock in on that one and really enjoy what's been an incredible season for Army and Navy. Navy, stumble a little bit from time to time, but really incredible year for them, no doubt about that. And they're trying to spoil a little bit of fun for Army at the end of it. But let's get into the transfer portal updates. I said that the header here says wide receiver talent continues to stack. I should have been talking about the quarterbacks because quarterback commitments started to roll in last night. Didn't quite have a chance to update all of this, but let's go ahead and jump in here, and we'll start with those quarterbacks. And we got a new one up top. Luke Roman-Hoke has decided to join the transfer portal from Florida State. He was the talented freshman that came in after just a laundry list of quarterbacks for Florida State this year. It was DJU, and then it was Brock Glenn, and then it was Luke Roman-Hoke. And the kid has ridiculous talent. He has all the arm talent in the world you could possibly want. He is absolutely a guy that I'd be a little bit surprised if he got a position to just be an outright starter right away. But whatever place he goes to, he is going to be able to compete. He is going to be able to be in a position to possibly start, and then definitely in 2026, he could be a huge star in this game. I absolutely love this guy. Coming out of high school, he's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the class, and I think he's going to be a really special player down the road just a little bit. Wherever he does go, it'll be interesting to see, does he go to a place where he can start immediately, or is he going to sit for a little bit? It'll be fascinating. Definitely one of those commitments that it'll be interesting to see just where he fits into that depth chart wherever he does end up. Malik Murphy is another one to watch. It sounds like Auburn and Miami are kind of in the running for him right now. Would be a big-time starter at either of those places. I would assume would be almost the immediate starter at both those places. I tend to believe he fits what Miami does just a little bit better in terms of his ability to push the ball down the field and do some of that type of stuff with the electric wide receivers that they do have. Can't necessarily say that confidently. So either one of those that he ends up at, he will be absolutely incredible. I would lean Miami, at least from my heart of hearts as of right now. Connor Wegman is the first commitment that we have to talk about. Houston has gotten the commitment from Connor Wegman, and this is a dangerous mix. When you have Willie Fritz with a very talented quarterback that can be very accurate, a lot of special things can happen. So to me, Houston just became a dark horse for the Big 12 in 2025 because I think the world of Connor Wegman. I think he was in a very bad situation at A&M. I think he's in a much better one now, and I think that kid can really set the world on fire this year, if I'm being totally honest. Jackson Arnold, it looks like is going to be Mississippi State. There's still Auburn kind of pushing there, possibly trying to get a visit here pretty soon. So maybe it'll depend on what happens with Malik Murphy, or maybe Malik Murphy will depend on what happens with Jackson Arnold. So it'll be interesting to watch. Auburn has to be as active as just about anyone in this realm of the portal, so makes sense that they're in that area, but going to be fascinating to watch that unfold. Caden Salter, one little tidbit about him, it sounds like Colorado is a team to watch there. I don't know if he would go there to be the starter over Julian Lewis. I would tend to believe that's probably the better way for them to go about business, but can't necessarily confirm that. Going to be interesting to watch that one unfold, but Caden Salter to Colorado would be an electric factory. I'll be totally honest with you. It'd be very, very fun to watch. Michael Van Buren has left Mississippi State, which makes me feel a little bit more confident about Jackson Arnold finding his way over to Starkville at the end of the day, but Michael Van Buren is a guy to watch. He is in my opinion, he is a star in the making in college football. I think he has all of the tools you could possibly want. He just needs to be put in the right system. Frankly, if he finds his way over to Vanderbilt and he's their starter next year, watch out for the Commodores. I think that could be a very, very special combination between him and Tim Beck. But obviously, plenty more to happen here. Plenty more guys that will jump in, I'm sure. But let's get to a couple other commitments here. And one more guy that I'm keeping my eye very, very closely on. But let's start with Darian Mensah, a remarkably talented player from Tulane, had a great freshman year. He has walked out the door. He is finding his way off to Duke. He is committed to the Duke Blue Devils. He will take the spot of Malik Murphy. Very talented kid. Absolutely has a super high ceiling. Definitely does fit what Duke likes to do. It'll be really interesting to see what that offense looks like with Darian Mensah at the helm. Very talented kid. Cannot wait to see what he can do. And also around Tulane, just a little tidbit here. Ty Thompson has also said he's going to enter the portal, the backup quarterback, but he will start in that bowl game against Florida as kind of an audition. We'll see what happens there. Maybe he decides to stay at Tulane after that game. A lot of different stuff happening in the portal, but Ty Thompson seems to be heading that direction. He will start in that game against Florida, and then we'll see where the chips fall after that. Thomas Castellanos, you are a Florida State Seminole, and that's a huge get for Cuz Malzahn. I know this is a guy that a lot of people are going to question because he was benched at Boston College this past year, did not necessarily play great football towards the end of the year. This is a Gus Malzahn quarterback, prototypical as possibly can be. He is as good for that offense as I can possibly imagine. It'll be interesting to see if they go out and get another guy with Luke Kromenhoek going out the door, but definitely a very talented guy. I expect him to be the starter for them next year, and frankly, I expect it to be a very, very fun offense to watch. Devon Dampier has made his choice. He is going to Utah, as we thought a couple of days ago. His offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, took the job there over Andy Ludwig, and it made sense. Devon Dampier finds his way to Utah, and a huge pickup for the Utes there. Chandler Morris is another guy to watch, top 5 in the FBS in passing yards this past year. It sounds like Oklahoma State is a team to watch here. It sounds like he will be visiting there later this week. Maybe he's already there, if I'm being honest. A lot of moving parts in the transfer portal, as you can imagine, but very talented kid, can sling the rock all over the field, and has played at that Power 4 level at TCU. So it'll be interesting to see who gets involved here. I think Oklahoma State would be a very, very good fit for this kid. But moving on to the wide receivers, because this is a group. It is an absolute group. There are so many dudes on here that I absolutely love. We'll start with Deuce Robinson, because he's the new name on here. He's a monster. At 6'6", he's going to be an absolute beast. I know Texas was firmly involved when he came out of high school. I would expect him to be firmly involved this time around. That being said, a lot of USC players, or there's been some murmurs at least, that some USC players are following Miller Moss wherever he goes. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. It sounds like it's going to be Missouri or Louisville. We'll figure out what happens there, and then maybe you see Deuce Robinson find his way to wherever that school is. So definitely something to watch there. I would lean Texas right now as the main contender, but obviously whenever Miller Moss makes that decision, we could figure out very quickly that the real contender was actually whatever school Miller Moss was going to. Dane Key is another one to watch. It's going to be Nebraska versus Georgia in this one, and he is at Georgia right now. They're going to try to lock that one down. If they can get this one, it would be huge for that UGA wide receiver group. Have a lot of young talent coming in with C.J. Wiley and Taylon Taylor. Adding a true veteran that is one of my favorite wide receivers in the country, I think would be a great, great addition to this offense. Would be a huge piece, and I would have to imagine would be the wide receiver 1 next time around for Georgia. If you were to commit there, I expect a decision coming one way or the other relatively soon, probably over the weekend. In fact, I expect a lot of decisions over this upcoming weekend. Kevin Concepcion, he is down to, I believe, 6 teams. A&M's in there, Colorado, Bama, a couple other teams around that are absolutely in this thing. It sounds like Bama has the inside track right about now. Obviously, a lot of this stuff can change pretty quickly. I heard a rumor that he canceled an A&M visit. Don't know how much truth there is in that. A lot of different moving parts in this, but as of right now, I would expect Bama. I know Colorado is going to be pushing very, very hard. He would fit into both those offenses just absolutely perfectly. He's one of my best favorite players in the portal right now, and I think he's just a star in the making, if I'm being totally honest. Micah Hudson, he is going to be an Aggie. It looks like that. There is a lot of crystal balls heading that direction. Jerome Miles, the very talented freshman with Micah Hudson, very talented duo. Not necessarily the most experienced duo, but a very talented duo that will be really interesting to watch unfold. A&M's probably going to have to do a little bit more work in the wide receiver room just to build out a little bit of the experience there, but very, very talented group nonetheless. And if they can pull in Micah Hudson, becomes that much more talented. And then a couple other guys to watch. CJ Daniels has cast a very wide net. It sounds like South Carolina's in, Florida's in, a couple other teams around, and then Georgia Tech seems to be the team that actually is in this recruitment. It'll be fascinating to watch. They just lost Eric Singleton, who has kind of been bouncing around with some different rumors. Auburn, Georgia, a lot of different teams that are in for Singleton, a lot of more teams that I assume will be in for Singleton by the end of that thing. But CJ Daniels, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. If he ends up as a Yellow Jacket, he will be the number 1 wide receiver on that team immediately, and I think he could do an absolutely incredible job at that place in that system. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. A lot of teams still very much after this kid. And then we just got to talk about Oklahoma. They have lost 5 wide receivers. I was just trying to count them just to make sure I had it right. But Andrel Anthony, J.J. Hester, Nick Anderson, Jaquez Petaway, and Jaleel Farouk have all left the program. Genuinely, I think they have 3 guys on the roster that are wide receivers right now. It is insane what has happened over there at Oklahoma, really across all the positions, but especially at that wide receiver position. some was expected, not necessarily saying that it wasn't expected, but Oklahoma's got to be the most active team in the portal when it comes to wide receivers. They got to get some dudes, and they got to get them very quickly, but it's going to be interesting to see how Brent Venables kind of handles this, because a lot of things are going wrong around there right now. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, we got some news around Oman Mielen, the Prince Will, a very, very talented player. Sounds like he's going to follow the same path his brother Princely did when he found his way to Ole Miss. Ole Miss is very much the leader right now. Ole Miss is the leader for a lot of the top guys in the portal, as you can imagine, with the way that Lane Kiffin goes about business, but would be a huge pickup for them. Very, very pure pass rusher like his brother Princely, and I would expect Ole Miss to win out on that one pretty soon here. For Jaheim Otis, it feels like Colorado is pacing the group right about now. I think there will be a couple others that try to get involved late here, but I do think it's going to be Colorado. I do think that commitment will be coming fairly soon. And then you do have the new guy, Williams Nwari, very, very talented kid. One of my favorite players in this thing, a talent just treasure trove. He can do just about everything you want to do. Top recruit from this last cycle, and tons of teams will be after this kid. I don't know exactly where he's leaning right now. I don't know what the rumors are going around, but have to assume that a team like LSU is involved. Have to assume that a lot of the teams in the SEC are very much involved for this kid. Bear Alexander, it sounds like he is down to SMU, Oregon, and Penn State. To me, SMU just makes the most sense out of that group. You get a little bit of that NIL structure that you would get at a place like Oregon. You get to play closer to home, which is something that I think is fairly important to what Bear Alexander is trying to do right about now, and you get a chance to be an immediate starter. It makes the most sense to me. Can't necessarily promise that's where he's leaning. I'm sure Oregon will be heard from in this process, but my gut reaction when I saw those top three was SMU just probably makes the most sense as far as I'm concerned. So that'll be something to watch. Definitely a very talented player. And then beyond that, Marvin Jones, 5-star out of high school, went to UGA first, found his way to Florida State, had, I believe, 4 sacks this past year. Very talented kid. Definitely one where you're probably going to take a flyer on him. He's one of those guys that he's too talented. He has so many physical tools that I would expect him to end up on a big-time roster. How much he plays on that big-time roster will still be a question. Definitely something to watch there, and it'll be fascinating to see where he ends up and how quickly he can get on the field there. And then the Texas D-line has taken quite the hit. They have lost 4 defensive linemen since it opened. Tia Savea, Aaron Bryant, Jure Bledsoe, and most importantly, that guy right there, Sadir Mitchell, are all in the portal right about now. Very talented guys. Sadir Mitchell, I thought, was going to be one of those, Vernon Broughton, Tavondre Sweat type guys next year for Texas. So Texas has to get very, very much involved in the D-linemen in the portal right now. Some very talented guys out there. They're going to have to go out and get some. There's no doubt about that. And see if they can possibly keep a couple of these guys intact. I don't think they've officially put their names in, so we'll see if Texas can hold on to a couple of them, or they have to go out and get to work finding a couple of replacements out there. But a couple other names to watch here. Fluff Bothwell, one of my favorite players in the portal, partly because of his name, partly because of the way that he plays. But 800 yards on the ground, 13 touchdowns for South Alabama. It looks like he will be in Louisville this upcoming weekend. Tons of teams going to be after this kid. Louisville's one of those positions where I don't necessarily fully understand it. 2 of the very, very talented freshman running backs that they do have in Isaac Brown and Duke Watson, I just don't see that one fully fitting. I could be wrong there. Maybe he does commit there and has great success, but the way that I see it, there's some other openings even around some of the power schools that he would be able to slide into a possible starting spot in. Can't promise that for Louisville. So that'll be interesting to watch. I wouldn't necessarily bet on Louisville in this process, but Jeff Brom does a great job recruiting transfers. There's no doubt about that. Tanner Koziel is a really interesting guy to watch. One of the top tight ends coming out of Ball State in the portal. 800 yards, 8 touchdowns on the year. He looks like he is down in Houston this weekend. We'll see if Connor Wegman can get in his ear and get him down there. And then Wisconsin is on the docket. If that one gets canceled, you can bet he's going to be a Cougar. And then Willie Fritz is really jumping for joy because he's got his quarterback, he's got a tight end target, and then it's just about building out the rest of this roster. It's going to be fascinating to watch this one, but if Houston gets this kid, you might just see the Cougars start to really roll downhill in this transfer portal. Jakeem Jackson is a guy you're going to want to watch. It looks like LSU is going to win out here from the Florida transfer at corner. They need it badly. There's no doubt about that. And we'll talk about why here in a second, but they need that badly. They're losing guys all over the place on that defense, particularly on that back end and in that front seven, really. it's been a nightmare for LSU to start this portal process. They will have to be very, very involved in the portal over the next month, but this would be a huge get, no doubt about that. This would be an immediate starter and definitely a guy that could at least subside some of the worries of a lot of the things that are going on around that place at LSU. And this is one of those things. PJ Woodland is one of the guys that he seems like he's going to jump into the portal. He was incredible as a freshman. He was a guy that I think is going to be an absolute star wherever he ends up next year. I think he has the chance to be one of the best corners in the entire country when it's all said and done. So this is a huge loss for LSU. They are going to do just about everything they can to make this guy rethink his decision. They're going to do everything they can to keep him in the fray. If they can't, then they got to get to work. And then wherever PJ Woodland ends up, congratulations to that team, because you got an absolute dude that's only going to get better and frankly could be an immediate starter for your team. So it's going to be wild. We're starting to get commitments starting to roll in. Feel like we're going to get a ton this upcoming weekend with a lot of guys going on visits and some different things happening around the way, and kind of the one singular opening that a lot of these playoff teams have. You would have to assume they're going to have a lot of different guys on campus and try to figure out what's going to happen with their portal class, and a lot of these will start to take shape over the next little bit. We'll break it all down on Monday, obviously, when all of this stuff starts to break. But let's take our third break here, and when we come back, let's talk about some superlatives for the CFP. What would be the most interesting title matchup is one of them that I have here. What's the best outright unit in this entire CFP? A lot of different things going into this one, so let's break it down right after this, so stick with us.